if you remember, like Bob Clark and Doug Campbell, they actually devoted a show. What was it called? The Lives of Fletcher
Yeah,
Pratt.
well, it's a Fletcher Party. What a
Right.
joke.
Yeah.
What an embarrassment. I mean, those.
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? It's me, the Triple B. And it's episode 243, baby. We are rhyming today. Rhyming and rhyming and rhyming. Today we're going to get into something we'll call Whatever Happened to That? And we'll get into a lot of witness testimony today and see exactly what they said and when they said it. Trust me, it'll be interesting. Faux shizzy. But before we get into it, let us hear a word from our delicious hot saucing partners. Silk City, baby. Talk to me. Big Bad Bob here with you for Silk City Hot Sauces. Why Silk City? Because this hot sauce comes to you directly from Paterson, New Jersey, also known as Silk City. These hot sauces are 100% natural, gluten-free, vegan, contain no chemicals, fillers, dyes, or junk. Everything is packed into recyclable glass containers because glass doesn't leach weird flavors into the product. All other hot sauces are sourced in small batches from locally bought fresh peppers. It's all about the pepper, people. I'm telling you. Your boy, Big Bad Bob, loves his food like he loves his women. Hot and spicy, but not so hot you can't eat them. So, if you love yourself some sauce and you're tired of trying to transform your bland meat into something edible, with the tip of a jar, you will transform your life forever. Head over to silkcityhotsauce.com, place an order, and upon checkout, enter the code GUNMAN, that's GUNMAN, for 20% off of your entire order. You won't regret it. Thank me later. Peace. That's right. Go get you some. And a special sale, summer sale is going on right now. Head over to Silk City Hot Sauce. You can get 13 bottles of hot sauce for half off for the low price of $65 for 13 bottles. You cannot beat that deal. So if you've been waiting, now is your chance to strike. You will be good to go at least for 6 months. 13 bottles, I would think that would last you probably 6 months or so. So head over to silkcityhotsauce.com and obtain yours today. Make sure to put in the code GUNMAN. I don't know if you're going to get an extra 20% off of that deal, but if you do, even better. So, from the whatever happened to that file, I came across something. Byline, May 1990. Okay. So this was math in my head here, 33 years ago. And this comes from The Conflict, which was a newsletter sent around called the Dorf Report. I guess sent out by a researcher named Robert Dorf. And you could buy a single edition of Conflict, the Dorf Report, for a mere $3.25 back then. And times that by 12 if you like it a year. So, apparently Mr. Dorf lived in Beverly Hills, California, so he was definitely not hurting for money. Anyway, let's get right into this JFK new evidence alert. Apparently, in May of 1990, on the 11th of May, a well-known JFK researcher by the name of J. Gary Shaw and a relative newcomer, Houston private investigator Joe West, staged a JFK assassination news conference at the Key Largo Hotel. During the annual meeting of the National Association of Certified Legal Investigators held in Galveston, Texas. Shaw is the co-director of the JFK Assassination Information Center in Dallas and co-author of Cover Up, a book which lambasted the establishment's theory of JFK's murder. Now, when you hear those names, Shaw, Joe West, 1990, first thing that pops in my head is, okay, this is something about Ricky Don White, or this is something about James Files, but no, it's something totally different, which I was a little amazed by. So let's continue. The new information came mostly from an unidentified source. Well, there's red flag number one, folks. An unidentified source who provided Shaw and West with his direct conversations with persons whom he determined had taken an active role in the planning and the murder of President Kennedy. The source said that while incarcerated in an Arizona prison, he saved the life of a person he later found out was the son of a well-known mobster. After his release, he was contacted by the mobster and went to work for him as an enforcer, i.e., a strong-arm type and a hitman. This was followed by similar employment for the Bonanno crime family. His work was so respected, he was retained by, quote, the Commission, the highest power clique in the mafia. In the mid-70s, when the possibility of mafia involvement in JFK's murder was being discussed, the Commission directed the source to find out who the participants were in Kennedy's murder and to interrogate them. This led to John Rosselli and eventually to Sam Giancana and Charles Nicoletti, with the latter being an enforcer for Sam Giancana. Rosselli had to be tortured before he revealed the involvement of the other two and additional information concerning JFK's assassination. Giancana allegedly received $1 million from the CIA for his efforts to kill Castro. There came a point in time when CIA personnel, distraught over the gangster's lack of success with the Castro death plots and angry at JFK for a myriad of grievances, told their hired murderers that they could keep the money for the Castro job if they would just murder the president instead. Several plots were supposed to go forward in 1963. The first was in Chicago, slated for November 2nd under the sponsorship of Sam Giancana. On November 11th, a group of 5 Latins and 5 Anglos, that's white people, met to discuss additional murder plans at the Cinders Club in Dallas. Jack Ruby and an unnamed New Orleans businessman were part of this homicide conference. The second attempt occurred in Miami on November 18th under the tutelage of Santos Trafficante. It should be remembered that a witness quoted Trafficante as saying, that Kennedy would not be reelected in 1964 because he's going to be dead. And that would definitely stop you from being reelected, I would think. Carlos Marcello allegedly organized an attempt on Kennedy's life in Houston on November 21st. It has long been alleged that conspirators met at the Helena Motel in Houston and that Jack Ruby was there that day. The source had no knowledge about why these attempts failed. West learned from a law enforcement source in Houston that the attempt in that city failed because the president's limousine traveled in a different lane than had been anticipated, causing trees to block the assassin's line of fire. 3 of those involved in this attempt were observed running to their car carrying rifle cases. The plot in Dallas went off with the key assistance of Jack Ruby, whom it is now claimed played a much larger role than previously suspected. The plots in Chicago and Miami were the subject of considerable discourse in the final report of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, but this did not include the names of the sponsors listed above. The source went on to say that Giancana, Rosselli, Nicoletti, Ruby met on the evening of November 21st at the Cabana Motel in Dallas to engage in last-minute discussions on the assassination attempt, which succeeded at 12:30 the following day. Ruby allegedly obtained the guns used to fire at the president from a burglary at a ranch located slightly west of Abilene, Texas. This burglary occurred on November the 13th. The gun which fired the headshot that snuffed out the life of the president was a .35 caliber pump-type Remington rifle, which was fired by Nicoletti from a hiding place behind the picket fence located on the grassy knoll. Rosselli told the source he patrolled the parking lot while Nicoletti did the shooting. Rosselli then took the rifle and got away in a car. Nicoletti integrated himself with onlookers and eventually made his escape. The other 2 shooters supposedly fired from buildings located behind the president. They were not named, but the source claims to know who they were and says they are still alive. Conflict met the source of these allegations on 2 successive days. He is a large man, in the twilight of his life, very soft-spoken and very deliberate. We discussed an entirely different area of the JFK investigation. The source's answers to our questions were accurate in certain key details, which only someone extremely knowledgeable about these details can answer. On that basis, Conflict found this man credible. He was not questioned as to his motives for his forthcoming attitude, one which might well earn him a resting place with a long list of others who claimed knowledge about the conspiracy to murder JFK. It should be pointed out that this source originally wrote to Anthony Summers of conspiracy fame, claiming he could give the author additional information about Kennedy's murder. Conflict learned that Summers passed this lead to Gary Shaw, who eventually provided it to Joe West. It should also be pointed out that G. Robert Blakely, the controversial former chief counsel of the HSCA, postulated the same general theory about organized crime's involvement in Kennedy's murder. However, he ruled out any involvement on the part of the CIA. According to Anthony Summers, Blakey told him many years ago he felt confident he could get convictions against individual members of organized crime for their role in the Kennedy assassination if the Department of Justice wanted to bring them to trial. This was the same DOJ which allowed over 9 years to pass before replying to the House Committee's final report on the murders of JFK and Martin Luther King. That reply stated that there was no basis for continuing the investigation. The Galveston news conference was covered by the Houston affiliate for ABC, who said they were pulling with CNN, a Galveston newspaper, the Houston Chronicle, and several other papers. Additional details relating to this story will appear in the June edition of Conflict, the Dorff Report. So, whatever happened to all of that hoopla, all of that fanfare and hoopla. No, it wasn't James Files because he was in jail in Joliet, Illinois, not Arizona. And apparently, whoever this guy that was in jail in Arizona um, was out and about before the House Select Committee on Assassinations. So, anybody know any more information about that? Because I don't. Once again, it's one of those famous Joe West investigations like we get from, Chauncey Holt, James Files, and Ricky Don White. Add it to the list, folks. All right, let's get into some eyewitnesses. All right, let's take a look at this report that I found. And this is a FBI memorandum. The Special Agent in Charge, Dallas, from Special Agent Manning Clements. Date 11/22/63. So this is same day of the assassination. It says thusly: the writer, being Manning Clements, has reviewed copies of statements taken by, don't know what this word means, SO in capitals, from various individuals who either had information or were in a position to have obtained information. They are as follows, with a brief description of what they can supposedly offer. Jesse James Williams of Irving, Texas, related that he and another party went to a motel room, described as the first motel on the right across from the Houston Street Viaduct a day or so ago. The man in the motel pulled a rifle and also a pistol in efforts to force the woman in the group to have sexual relations. They obtained the license number as Texas CD 1583 from a car supposedly belonging to the person who was attempting this armed rape. Interesting. Never heard that before. Never heard anything else about it either before. So, interesting. Hugh Betzner Jr. took pictures at Houston and Elm of pertinent events. SO supposedly kept some pictures. Number 3, Jim Braden, Los Angeles, California, used telephone in Texas Book Depository building and was accosted by Negro elevator operator as to his presence in the building. Now, the reason I'm reading all these to you is because some of these accounts vary differently from what we have established as, quote, known assassination canon. Now, it's always been believed that Jim Braden was arrested coming out of the Dow Tex building for trying to use the telephone. Nay, nay. It says right here in black and white in this FBI report. He used the telephone in the school book depository building and was accosted by a Negro elevator operator as to his presence in the building. Number 4. Julia Ann Mercer saw 2 men in green Ford truck. Texas license plates. Truck had wording air conditioning on the side. One man took what appeared to be a gun case from the truck. This was about 11:30 a.m. Philip Hathaway allegedly saw a man with a rifle case with a gun in it at about 11:50 a.m. near Maine and Ackerd. Gene Hill took pictures at the approximate instant and saw man running. Featherstone of Times Herald has some of her pictures. Marianne Moorman took pictures as shot rang out. Bob Jackson, Times Herald reporter, not interviewed, supposedly saw a rifle and a man who fired shots from the window. You would think that that'd be one man that you want to interview, an alleged eyewitness to the man and rifle in the sixth floor. Lee Bowers saw some strange cars in the area. J.C. Price claims he saw Connolly hit, heard volley of about 5 shots, and saw man running. Larry Floor states, made telephone call in schoolbook depository building and was questioned as a suspect. Again, he's another one that we've always heard was arrested in the Dow Tex building. This clearly says Texas Schoolbook Depository Building. Robert Edwards with Ronald Fisher saw man at window on 5th floor of Schoolbook Depository Building. Man appeared hiding or lying in an awkward position. They heard shots shortly thereafter. Barbara Rowland and husband Arnold were in front of the Schoolbook Depository Building. Husband called her attention to a man in the window with a rifle. She could not see. Husband says was second floor from top. Man was at 2 open adjoining windows. Gene Newman heard the shots, saw President slump. John Chisholm with wife and child saw the president slump at instant shot fired. Austin Miller heard shots, saw president slump, saw another shot hit the ground beyond the car. S.M. Holland heard shots, saw president slump, heard 3 other shots. Gail Newman with wife Billy. I think this is, I think they got this screwed up. Gail Newman with husband Bill and children heard shots, saw president slump. Royce Skelton heard the shots and saw the president hit. He was located northwest of something. Can't read it. O.S. McVie was said to have been on the railroad trestle in a position to observe, not interviewed. Charles Hester, with wife Beatrice, heard shots and believed they were from the Schoolbook Depository Building. Howard Brennan reportedly saw a man in the window of Texas Book Depository Building with a rifle taking aim. Emmett Hudson heard shots. No shit. Amos Ewins claims saw a man in the window of the Schoolbook Depository Building with a gun. So there you have it. First day, FBI, November 22nd, 1963. A collection of eyewitness statements. But what's interesting is those two who were supposedly arrested in the Dowtex, we now find out, no, they came out of the Schoolbook Depository Building, folks. Interesting. Next up, we have a list of witnesses, Dealey Plaza witnesses, that is, compiled by Tom Bethel during the Garrison investigation, and this was sent to Richard Burns, who was the assistant DA. Starting off, number 1, Victoria Adams. Watched the parade from the 4th floor window. Thought shots came from the knoll. Danny Arce. Thought shots came from the knoll. Mrs. Donald Baker, standing in front of the schoolbook depository, thought shots came from the Knoll area. Mrs. Jane Barry, standing in front of the TSBD, thought shots came from the west of her. Wilma Bond took some good pictures of Grassy Knoll, never yet published. Dick Sprague says good potential witness. She gives no indication of shot direction. O.V. Campbell, vice president of the schoolbook depository, shots came from the Knoll area. John Chisholm, standing in front of the Stemmons freeway sign, says the shots came from behind him. Mrs. Avery Davis thought shots came from the Knoll area. Mrs. Elsie Dorman took movies from the fourth floor window of the schoolbook depository. Thought shots came from the area of the records building. Buell Frazier drove Oswald to work, standing in front of the schoolbook depository, and he thought shots came from the Knoll. Dorothy Garner, fourth floor schoolbook depository, thought shots came from the Knoll. Officer Bobby Hargis, motorcyclist to left rear of a limousine, was splattered with blood, thought shots came from the Knoll. Charles Hester, on north side of Elm, thought shots came from immediately behind us. His wife was with him. But there's a commentary here. See Sprague for photos of Hester and his wife looking out rear of gazebo. Gene Hill, standing on south side of Elm, heard 4 to 6 shots with difference in sounds. Thought shooting was from Grassy Knoll. School teacher, good witness. S.M. Holland has consistently stated shots came from the Knoll, but his testimony has serious weaknesses. From his position, the Knoll and the book depository were in a straight line. Probably better to avoid him as a witness. Billy Lovelady, standing on the schoolbook depository steps, said he thought shots came from the Knoll. Has recently moved and has been in the hospital. I think Penn Jones has his address. Penn says he has now changed his story, making it consistent with the Warren Commission version of events. Interesting. Luke Mooney, deputy sheriff, thought that the shots came from the Knoll area and ran in that direction. William and Gail Newman, standing on the north side of Elm, thought shots came from behind them. Dramatic picture by Art Rickerby shows Newman lying on the ground looking back towards the picket fence. Arnold Rowland saw 2 men in the 6th floor building, or the 6th floor of the schoolbook depository building before the assassination, and thought the shots came from the Knoll area. Bill Shelley, standing in the schoolbook depository entrance, thought the shots came from the west. Edgar Leon Smith, standing near Elm and Houston corner, thought shots came from the Knoll area. He was a police officer in the traffic division. Joe Marshall Smith, police officer in the traffic division, thought shots came from the bushes of the overpass. Quote, unquote. James Tegg, standing by the underpass on Main Street, was hit on the cheek by a ricochet. Thought shooting was from over at Monument to his left. Carolyn Walther thought shots came from the schoolbook depository, but saw 2 men in window. Seymour Weitzman, deputy sheriff, thought shots came from the Knoll, ran up the Knoll and scaled the fence, then ran to the schoolbook depository and found the rifle on the 6th floor. Stephen Wilson, on the 3rd floor of the schoolbook depository, thought shots came from west end of building or colonnade. Mentioned in Rush to Judgment, FBI tried to get him to change his story. Abraham Zapruder, standing on the knoll. Initial statement to Secret Service said the shots came from behind him. He later changed his story. Nearly all the above listed witnesses gave testimony tending to corroborate the shooting came from the grassy knoll. To make a case consistent with the concept of crossfire, one would possibly need to introduce other witnesses who said the shots came from another direction. My suggestion would be to call Josiah Thompson as a witness. He is a philosophy professor at Haverford College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He has done an analysis of the testimony of the eyewitnesses, which strongly indicates shooting was done from at least two directions. A book by him is due out this fall. Tom Bethel, C.C. Jim Garrison, District Attorney, and Charles Ward, Chief Assistant District Attorney. And here's some more for you, folks. Harry Weatherford. He was in the sheriff's office on Main and Houston, and he thought shots came from the knoll. Jack Weaver, photographer, intersection of Main and Houston, the knoll. David Wigman, NBC photographer and camera car 1. He thought the knoll. Seymour Weitzman, of course, we already mentioned him from the knoll. Robert West was a Dallas County surveyor at the corner of Main and Houston. He thought the shots came from the knoll. Karen Westbrook was on North Elm between the Triple Underpass and the School Depository with Gloria Calvary, Carolyn Reed, and Hicks. She did not say. Tom Wicker in the White House press bus. No opinion. Lucy Whitaker, a stenographer with the Macmillan Publishing Company and the School Book Depository, was standing on the northwest corner of Elm in Houston with Lawrence. He thought shots came from the knoll. Bonnie Ray Williams, an employee of the School Book Depository, was on the 5th floor with Jarman and Norman. He said shots came from the School Book Depository. Otis Williams, bookkeeping supervisor, was at the entrance on the steps of the School Book Depository, and he thought shots came from the knoll. R.M. Williams was at the corner of Main, east of Houston. He thought shots came from the knoll. He was a Dallas police officer. Linda Willis on the lawn south of Elm, west of the intersection. She thought shots came from the knoll. Phil Willis, southwest corner of Elm in Houston, photographer. He thought shots came from the knoll and the School Book Depository. Rosemary Willis, southwest corner of Elm. She thought shots came from the knoll. James Willman, Dallas Morning News, no opinion. Steve Wilson, office manager of Allen Bacon Publishing in School Book Depository. He was on the 3rd floor, and he thinks shots came from the west end of the building. Walter Winborn of the Union Terminal Railroad Company. He was on the Triple Underpass, and he thought shots came from the knoll. John Wiseman, a Dallas sheriff, was in the sheriff's office in Maine and Houston. He ran to the knoll. Mary Woodward, a Dallas Morning News writer, was on North Elm near the Stemmons sign. She thought shots came from the knoll. James Worrell, a student at the southwest corner of Elm in Houston in front of the School Book Depository, thought shots came from the book depository. Ralph Yarborough, senator in the vice president's car, thought shots came from the School Book Depository. Rufus Youngblood, Secret Service vice president car, thought shots came from the book depository. And Abraham Zapruder, dress manufacturer, North Pergola photographer, thought shots came from the knoll. So, how does this all break down when you really break it down? So, out of 326 witnesses in Dealey Plaza who were interviewed in some form or fashion by somebody, whether it be the news, the FBI, the Secret Service, Dallas Police, or the Sheriff's Office, or a combination of any of the above. 326 total witnesses. Out of those 326 witnesses, they reported shots coming from the school book depository. That number was 46. 46 out of 326. Witnesses who reported shots from the grassy knoll area numbered 90. 90 folks. So almost double the amount of people who thought shots came from the school book depository said they came from the knoll. Witnesses who reported shots from the Dow Techs. Who? Witnesses who reported shots from both the knoll and the school book depository numbered at 6. Witnesses who reported other accounts, 14. Witnesses who did not know or didn't have an opinion, numbered at 18. And this is your biggest block of answers coming from this witness pool. Witnesses who were not asked where they thought the shots came from, numbered out of 326, 154 of the 326 witnesses were not asked at all whether or not or where that they thought the shots came from. Because obviously, that's not very important. Especially when you already know your guy is up on the 6th floor of the school book depository. So yeah. And that little list there was put together by Craig Cohn in 1992, folks. Now, of course, we all know how unreliable eyewitness testimony can be. I think that's a good cross section of what folks believed. I mean, you're in the middle of this thing as it's going on. You have to grasp some kind of a concept where shots are being fired from in your brain at that moment. Depending on where you're standing, of course, your answer might be different due to the echo pattern, unfortunately, that Dealey Plaza was in. It's basically this valley of a grassy area surrounded by very tall buildings that sound just bounces off of back and forth. So of course, the closer you are to the shots, North Houston, Main and Elm, the less likely you are to have a clearer picture of where the shots are coming from because you're right in the middle of all these buildings. Now, the further you get out away from Houston Street, as you're coming down Elm, you're down towards the triple underpass. I think these people may have gotten a clearer sound profile, less affected by the echoing of these big buildings. And of course, when you're talking about many of these railroad workers that were on the overpass, stated they thought shots came from the knoll. I don't think one of them said shots came from the school book depository. So it's very interesting stuff. Very interesting to think about and ponder, sure. Now, this next document that I'm going to share with you is very important to pay very close attention to. It encompasses a lot of details about the school book depository building itself, which is important when you're looking into, the overall operation of this building. And this report was put together by the Secret Service of the Treasury Department um, as protective research. Okay. This report covers their interviews from December 2nd to the 6th, 1963. And this investigation was done by Special Agents Arthur Blake, William Carter, and Elmer Moore. The synopsis: this report covers inquiries which were made at the School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, Texas. All employees who work in this building and who were present at work on November 22nd have been interviewed as set forth below, and written statements taken from those who were able to furnish pertinent information concerning the assassination. And then we go to the section details of investigation. And we go about the building itself here first. So the School Book Depository is a privately owned firm engaged in the warehousing and shipping of textbooks for various publishers. The books are shipped to schools in Texas and surrounding states. The firm presently occupies a building at 411 Elm Street, Dallas, Texas, and has occupied the building since January of 1962. Prior to January 1962, the firm was located at 501 Elm Street, the Dowtex Building, Dallas, Texas. The presently occupied building is leased from Mr. D. Harold Bird, who has owned the building for many years. The officers of this company are Mr. Jack Cason, President, Mr. O.V. Campbell, Vice President, and Mr. Roy S. Truly, Director and Superintendent of Operations. This firm also furnishes office space for 7 publishing companies, whose books and publications are handled by the Texas School Book Depository. These publishers are as follows: Lyons and Carnahan, room 201, that's the second floor. Southwestern Publishing Company, room 203, that's the second floor. Allen and Bacon, room 301, that's the third floor. The Macmillan Company, room 302, that's the third floor. The American Book Company, room 303, third floor. McGraw-Hill Book Company and their subdivision, the Gregg Publishing Company, room 305, that's the third floor. And the Scott Forsman Company, room 401, that is the fourth floor. So there were offices of the book companies, these 7 different ones, spanning the second, third, and fourth floors, or at least parts of them, of the School Book Depository. The normal working hours for the employees of the School Book Depository are from 8 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. with a 45-minute lunch period. The employees of the publishing company have various working schedules, but all of them are normally out of the building by 5 p.m. Mr. Eddie Piper, age 55, is employed by the School Book Depository as a handyman and janitor. His normal working hours are from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and he usually works until 7 or 8 p.m. Among his duties are to clean the offices and toilets of the depository after all the employees have left for the day. He also checks to see that all the lights are out and doors are locked before he leaves. During the evening hours, and usually after Piper leaves the building, 2 employees of the Acme Building and Maintenance Company come to the depository building and they clean the offices of the publishing companies and the toilets on the second, third, and fourth floors. These people usually leave the building around midnight. They are furnished with keys to the building and are required to lock the entrance when they leave. The building then remains unoccupied for the rest of the night. Now, this is interesting, folks, because way, way back in the day, many, many moons ago, I did a very interesting show all about this Acme what do they call it? The Acme Building and Maintenance Company. Um, they're kind of sketchy, you know what I mean? And they had keys to the building, and they were normally there every night until midnight. Now, who's to say that either in the evening or later a little bit at night, because apparently this other company was there till midnight, did they always lock the front entrance while they're in there on the second, third, and fourth floor cleaning? It's hard to say. I mean, if they didn't, then hell, anybody could have walked in there, went to the back staircase, and bypassed all the floors, went right up to the sixth floor and hid that rifle, threw some shells on the floor. Anything is possible. And that's why the Secret Service is covering their bases here. But the Acme company is not the only company. The Smith Detective Agency and Night Watch Service makes periodic checks of the building during the nighttime hours to determine whether all doors are locked and all lights are out. I mean, it seems like a little bit of overkill to me for a book, a textbook warehouse. I mean, why couldn't Eddie Piper, if he's cleaning the rest of the building and cleaning all the toilets, why couldn't he just clean the second, third, and fourth floor offices space as well and those toilets? Why the need to hire this extra company to come in and do it after Piper leaves? And then you're going to hire another company to come by and make sure that that company locked the door and turned off all the lights every night. I mean, I guess this was a thing back then. I'm not 100% sure. We're talking about 1963 here. You know, I don't know when, alarms like door or window alarms came into effect. Um, but maybe in the time before that, people hired these night watch companies to just go around and check on their businesses a couple of times a night just to make sure that nobody's broken in and all the lights are off and everything is as it should be. Um, I don't know, just weird to me, just a little weird. But again, anybody who is surveilling this building would see this pattern of events taking place. They would see when Eddie Piper leaves and locks the door. They would see when this Acme company comes and when they leave. And they would notice when this other company, the Smith Detective Agency, would come around and do their periodic checks. And if so inclined, I'm just saying maybe an employee of one of these various agencies could be paid handsomely for a key to the depository, a copy of a key to the depository, where then they could go in at their leisure and do their thing and leave without the possibility of being caught in the building while people are actually in it working or cleaning. Um, Very interesting. So the portions of the first, second, third, and fourth floors not occupied by office space are used for book storage. And the entire fifth, sixth, and seventh floors are used for book storage. The actual filling of orders and packing of books for shipment takes place on the first floor of the building. Okay, so let's lay it out for everybody. You have this, and I had it too. Don't feel bad. I had this vague impression that these books were scattered all over the building. Okay. And that these order fillers have an order and they need to fill it. So they're just running all over the building, ping-ponging back and forth between floors and getting their orders together and this, and that. No, that's not how it works. So basically, on the first floor, there would be some books, like probably, a couple cases of all the books offered, okay, which would make it very easy to pick an order. You're all on one floor, all right? So you're basically going down your checklist, you go here, 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 and you get however many books they need, however many boxes they need of the books to get your orders together. And if it so happens that you need more books than is on the first floor of this certain group of books, that there are more of these books up on the upper floors somewhere in their bulk storage places. So when they're filling orders, they're staying on the first floor. When they are replenishing the first floor, that is when they go up and get other books, more cases of books, and bring down to the first floor. So, very interesting to know how that worked. So, technically, Oswald or any of the other order fillers, you know, like him and Buell Frazier and whoever else, Givens, Jarman, would have been mostly working on the first floor. And if they were seen on any other floor, that would mean that they were replenishing the stock on the first floor because they had already gone through everything that was down there. So when the idea is put forth that, oh yeah, I saw Oswald on the sixth floor, and his clipboard is found up there of these orders he was supposed to be filling. He wasn't actually filling orders up there. He was basically replenishing the first floor stock. So he normally would not have been on these upper floors, normally, unless more stock was needed. During the period of December 2nd through the 5th, all persons employed in this building were interviewed, and the results of these interviews are set forth as follows. Mr. Jack Kaysen, he is the president of the Schoolbook Depository, and he stated that to his knowledge, he had never seen Oswald. Among Mr. Kaysen's duties is public relations, and he is away from the building much of the time in that capacity. On November 22nd, Mr. Kaysen left the building at about 11 a.m. to meet some friends who were arriving in town to attend his daughter's wedding scheduled for November 23rd, 1963. Therefore, he was not in the building or in the area at the time of the assassination and has no knowledge of these events. Mr. O.V. Campbell, Vice President of the Depository, advised that although he does not have the title, he actually acts as more of an office manager, takes care of the payroll, and does the hiring of office personnel. The office of this firm is located on the second floor of the building, and the office personnel has very little, if any, contact with the warehouse employees. Mr. Campbell continued that to his knowledge, he had never known Oswald and does not recall ever having seen him prior to the time that Oswald's photograph was shown on television on the day of the shooting. At the time of the shooting, Mr. Campbell was standing on the steps at the front entrance to the depository building and was unable to furnish any pertinent information concerning the assassination. Mr. Campbell continued that Oswald had made no provisions for disposition of wages due him for the week of November 18, 1963. The actual amount due after deductions was $43.37, representing 4.5 days' pay from Monday, November 18th to noon on November 22nd. All of the warehouse employees, including Oswald, were normally paid in cash on a twice-monthly basis. On October 31st and on November 15th, Oswald was paid $104 and 41 cents in cash, representing wages, less deductions for the periods. On December 3rd, 1963, Mr. Campbell wrote a company check number 6052 in the amount of $43.37 payable to Mrs. Lee Harvey Oswald and representing full payment due Oswald for his last week of employment. This check was turned over to Special Agent William Carter, Secret Service, for delivery to Mrs. Marina Oswald, widow. Mr. Campbell also furnished a copy of Oswald's W-4 form, which was executed on October 16, 1963, the first day of his employment. All right, so Mr. O.V. Campbell. Mr. Roy Truly, director of the School Book Depository and superintendent of operations, has been interviewed on several occasions between November 26th and December 4th by this agency. Mr. Truly probably had more contact with Oswald than any other of the other employees at the depository. Mr. Truly stated that Oswald's employment with his firm resulted from the following circumstances. On or about October 14th, Mr. Truly received a telephone call from a woman living in Irving. He had never heard of her prior to that time and did not recall her name until newspaper stories subsequent to the shooting mentioned a Mrs. Payne of Irving. And then he recalled that she was the woman from whom he had received the above-mentioned telephone call. Mrs. Payne stated that she had a young man staying at her home who was unemployed, in need of a job, and whose wife was expecting a child in the very near future. Mrs. Payne continued that she had a neighbor whose brother, Wesley Frazier, worked at the depository, and Frazier stated that he thought there might be a job open at the depository. Mr. Truly stated that he did not need a temporary order filler at that time, and he told Mrs. Payne to have her friend come down for an interview. Truly stated that he did need a temporary order filler. On the following day, Lee Oswald came to Mr. Truly's office for an interview, at which time he told Truly that he was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, that he had never been arrested or in any difficulty with the police, and that he was badly in need of a job. Mr. Truly decided to hire Oswald and told him to report for work the next day, which was October 16, 1963. And during the first few hours of his employment, Oswald worked with other employees, learning the job of order filling, and after that, worked by himself. Mr. Truly added that Oswald was a very quiet person and accomplished his duties in a satisfactory manner. Oswald was paid at the rate of $1.25 an hour, worked a regular day shift from 8 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. I think it was supposed to be 4:45 p.m. 5 days a week, and had never missed a day's work during the period of his employment, which ended at noon on November 22nd, 1963. Oswald's duties required that he, on occasion, visit the warehouse areas of all floors in the building, including the 6th floor. Mr. Truly stated that about 12:10 on November 22nd, he and Mr. O.V. Campbell walked out of the front entrance to the building and stood at the bottom of the steps waiting for the presidential motorcade to pass by. He continued that the president's automobile passed his location at about 12:30, and a moment later, 3 shots rang out. Almost immediately, Mr. Truly saw a motorcycle patrolman pushing through the crowd and heading for the entrance. Truly ran inside the building with the patrolman, who asked, "Where is the stairway?" Mr. Truly escorted him to the rear stairway. As they passed the shaft for the 2 freight elevators, Mr. Truly paused momentarily, and noting that neither of the elevators was available, he directed the way up the back stairway. As Mr. Truly started up the stairway from the 2nd to the 3rd floor, he noticed that the patrolman was not with him, and at the same time he heard the patrolman say something. Truly returned to the 2nd floor and saw the patrolman standing at the doorway leading to the lunchroom, with his pistol drawn and pointed at Oswald, who was then just inside the lunchroom near the doorway. The patrolman asked Mr. Truly if he worked in the building, and Truly said yes. Then Truly and the patrolman continued up the back stairway to the 5th floor, where they found an elevator and rode it up to the 7th floor. They proceeded up a short stairway to the door, leading out onto the roof of the building, where a quick examination was made of the rooftop area. They then returned to the 7th floor, got in the elevator, and proceeded down, stopping briefly at each floor to make a hurried search. When they arrived back at the 1st floor, there were numerous people about, many of them police officers. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Trulli noticed that most of the shipping and order room employees were congregated together in a group, and that Oswald was not among them. Trulli immediately conveyed this information to one of the police officers. It is Trulli's recollection that at the time, he and the patrolman met Oswald at the lunchroom door. Shortly after the shooting, Oswald was dressed in light-colored clothing and probably a T-shirt. The above information was incorporated into a statement and executed by Mr. Trulli. Additional information about the company obtained from Mr. Trulli is set forth as follows. The Schoolbook Depository operates another warehouse located at 1917 North Houston Street, Dallas, Texas, and at the present time there are 3 men employed there, none of whom work at the building located at 411 Elm. These men are Mr. H.S. Aiken, foreman, Edward Shields, and Frank Hester. Old Edward Shields, where's your rider? I dropped him off at the building. Now, for folks who've been listening to the show for a while now, you'll remember that Edward Shields, when interviewed for the HSCA, stated that Frazier showed up for work that morning and parked in front of his warehouse on Houston Street, and he was by himself. Oswald was not in the car with him, despite a different story told by Fuel Frazier. Employment in the shipping and order filling section, supervised by Mr. Trulli, varies seasonally. The normal number of employees is 13 or 14, but in January of each year, he hires 4 extra personnel from 6 weeks to 2 months. Then again, in June, he hires about 10 to 15 extra persons for the summer months, which is the busiest time for the company. In late August and September, most of these extra employees are dropped. However, about 3 to 5 of the extra employees are kept on during October, and then during the months of November and December, employment drops to the normal of about 13 to 14. Oswald was hired as a temporary employee and probably would have been dropped within the next week or two after November 22nd, 1963. That's interesting, and I did not know that. So, Oswald would have been shite canned a week or two after the assassination anyway. The question then becomes, did Oswald know that? And what were his plans? What was he going to do about it? I mean, you got to find another job, right? You just had a baby. You want to patch things up with Marina. You want to get her out of Ruth Payne's house, but you're losing your job again? All right. Let's see here. Mr. Trulli also advised that the office of his firm usually employs about 17 persons, and that they sometimes hire an extra 1 or 2 people, during the summer months. Employees who work in the shipping and order filling section do not punch a time card. Mr. William Shelley, the senior employee in that section, makes a visual check of those present and reports to Trulli if anyone does not show up for work. Attendance and employment records had been seized by the FBI and were not available for examination by us. With regard to the boxes of books, which were stacked in a disorderly fashion near the 6th floor window from which the shots were fired, Mr. Trulli advised that several of his regular employees were engaged in laying a new plywood floor on the 6th floor and had temporarily moved these boxes of books to clear an area in which they were working. So there you go, folks. The whole sniper's nest theory just goes right out the window. that Oswald built this elaborate sniper's nest. No, no. Nay, nay. As I've always said, they were repairing the floor, replacing the floor on the 6th floor. And to do so, you need to clear floor space. And to do that, you need to stack boxes near the edges of the building. And right there confirms it. Thank you, Mr. Truly. Thank you, Mr. Truly. Truly was questioned about the identity of the first law enforcement officer to reach his building after the shooting, and he stated that to his knowledge, the first officer to enter the building was the motorcycle patrolman whose activities were previously described in this report. This officer has been identified as Patrolman M.L. Baker of the Dallas Police Department, and a copy of his statement was obtained. He further stated that no one contacted him regarding security measures prior to the visit of the president in Dallas. Mr. William Shelley, senior employee in the shipping and order filling department, was interviewed on December the 2nd, 1963 by the Secret Service. He acts as foreman of that section, although he does not have the title. Mr. Shelley is 37 years of age. He lives at 126 Tatum Avenue. He has been employed by the School Book Depository building continuously since October of 1945. Mr. Shelley furnished the information that Oswald worked directly under his supervision, that he normally spoke to Oswald 3 or 4 times a day concerning the work, but that he had never had any social conversation or any association outside of working hours with Oswald. He continued that Oswald was always at work on time, never missed a day's work, and that he learned the operations of his job faster than any other new employee they had ever hired. And they were going to shit can the poor son of a bitch in about a week or two, unbeknownst to him. Shelley continued that Oswald never took part in conversations with the other employees and appeared to want to be left alone. On the day of the shooting, Mr. Shelley last saw Oswald at about 11:50 a.m., at which time Oswald was working at his normal duties on the first floor. It is Mr. Shelley's recollection that Oswald was wearing khaki trousers and a t-shirt. The other employees of the shipping and order filling department were interviewed, and the information obtained from them is set forth as below. Eddie Piper, employed as a janitor and normally works from 10 to 7 or 8 p.m., stated he had never become closely acquainted with Oswald, although he had occasion to see him many times a day. At about 12 noon, Piper last saw Oswald on the first floor, and at that time Oswald said, "I'm going up to eat lunch." Piper stated that he ate lunch on the first floor and was still on that floor at the time of the shots, that he looked up at the clock and it was 12:25 p.m., and Piper did not see Oswald again. Charles Givens has been employed at this firm for about 2 months as a general laborer. He had never had any contact with Oswald other than to say hello. On November 22nd, Givens, along with other employees working on the 6th floor, was laying the new plywood floor. Givens stated that he saw Oswald on the 6th floor at about 11:45 on that date, and that Oswald was carrying a clipboard that appeared to have some orders on it. Givens felt that Oswald was looking for some books to fill an order, which is his job, and did not give the matter further thought. Shortly thereafter, Givens and the other employees working on the floor laying project quit for lunch, and they took both elevators down. They were racing the elevators to the first floor, and Givens heard Oswald call to them to send one of the elevators back up. It is Givens' recollection that Oswald was wearing a brown shirt when he last saw him. After Givens ate lunch, he left the building and was several blocks away at the time the shooting took place. He had gone to visit a friend who was employed at a nearby parking lot. Billy Nolan Lovelady stated that he had been employed with this firm for about 2 years as a stockman. He stated that he never got to know Oswald, that he was not friendly, was a wise guy, and a loner, and that he, Lovelady, decided to let him alone and not try to get friendly with him. The other employees usually play dominoes during their lunch period after they have eaten, but Oswald never showed any interest in taking part in the games. On November 22nd, Lovelady said he last saw Oswald at about 10 a.m., although Lovelady was in one of the elevators coming down from the 6th floor at about noon, and he heard Oswald ask them to send one of the elevators back up. Lovelady was one of the employees working on the floor laying project on the 6th floor. Danny Arce has been employed for about 3 months as a general laborer. He had never become well acquainted with Oswald, although he knew him by name. On November 22nd, 1963, he was also part of the floor laying crew on the 6th floor and last saw Oswald at about 11:45. So, there you have some interesting nuggets from the Secret Service detective research report. I guess how they could up their game in the future. What they could possibly learn from mistakes made that day in regards to at least this building in particular and its occupants and its employees. So I don't know, folks. Pretty sketchy stuff, some interesting stuff, and I hope you learned something today. I know I did, for sure. That's going to be it for today. This is your boy, Big Bad Bob, the Triple B. Follow along on TikTok and Twitter at the Loon Gummin 7. Also on Instagram at the Loon Gummin 7 now. Yeehaw, I'm a social media guru. On Facebook, look for the Lone Gunman Facebook page, and on YouTube, look for the Lone Gunman Facebook channel. Or not the Lone Gunman Facebook channel, the Lone Gunman podcast channel. That might do you a little better on YouTube. And for now, enjoy the soothing sounds of Shepherd of Fire and their hit song, Conspiracy. It's all about the JFK assassination. Until next time, folks, it's your boy. Peace.
fell face down in back seat of his car. Blood was on his head. Mrs. Kennedy cried, "Oh no!" And
We don't believe a word that they tell you. The FBI or the CIA. The media and the lies that they tell you. The big event that killed JFK. Yeah, they blew him away. Away. Away.